G'day. Those of you who've been watching for a while have noticed that I do the odd spot of TIG welding around the place. Now, I'm a bit of a mug TIG welder, and so every so often I have to resharpen my electrodes. That's not so bad when they're long, but when they're short, I get into a bit of strife. And so for some time I've been wanting to get myself a better sharpening arrangement. I thought I had something, but didn't quite work, so we're now on to plan B. So let's have a look at that. This is a new tungsten. Tungsten is a refractory metal, so it takes a lot to melt it. It generates a bit of heat when you grind it. Now, when this is new, I can hold that there like so, and you can see where my left hand is there, twirl that around and put a tip on it, not a problem. However, when it's that short, which is, and there's still a way to go before this becomes completely unusable, holding that there gets really difficult for two reasons. One is that my fingers are very close to the wheel there, but the other one is that because of all the heat that's being generated up here, that travels down, so it's not long before I have to take it away, put it down, all that sort of thing. I could wear gloves, but then I'm wearing gloves next to a spinning wheel, which isn't regarded as ideal. And the other thing with the gloves, I guess, is that when they're sitting there on my fingers, they're even close to the wheel, and so I start grinding the ends of the glove away. This is plan A, a pin chuck. This came from a reputable supplier. We won't mention names because they could well be as embarrassed as I am, but that works by tightening up. Now, I found that I couldn't get that tight enough so that when I was using it on the grinder, it wouldn't shake loose. And when you look at this, it's a typical, a bit like a 5C collet. It only sort of grips at one end. So when I put that 2.4 diameter electrode in there, it's only really the tips of these fingers that are doing the gripping. And so, unless you can get that really tight, it's not going to do a terribly good job. And what's more, with the side forces from the grinding, if I'm only gripping on the very end there, that can move around anyway, which doesn't help. So we're on to plan B. This is plan B. It's an ER8 collet chuck. Now, like its big brother, this is an ER40. These are good because they crush at both ends, and so what's happening is when you're grabbing a bit of round bar stock with one of these things, it's actually gripping along a length of it. So I saw this on eBay. I was looking for something else, and in fact the ER collet didn't occur to me until I looked at a table of ER collets, but I saw this and thought, well, actually that might do the job. And so this is a collet chuck, and what's meant to happen is you put your very fine burrs or cutters or whatever in there, and then you can grasp that in a more regular holder and use it for that. But what I'm going to do here is modify this so I can tighten it by hand and do all sorts of other mods to it to accommodate longer bits of electrode and all that sort of thing. ER collets have got a recommended tightening torque, and so for a 40, I think it's over 100 Newton meters. For an ER8, it's around about 8 Newton meters. And so, as a rule of thumb, we say you can just get 5 Newton meters with a screwdriver. So being able to tighten that by hand is quite realistic, and it should do the job for me, I think. This is the plan. I've decided if I put a collar around here somewhere, I can turn that quite happily. I also want to put a collar up on here so that I can grab the two collars and undo things. And the other thing that has to happen to this is I need to drill out the middle here. The hole that's going through stops about there somewhere. If I have a long electrode, it might come all the way through. Probably for the long electrodes, I'd still just sharpen them as they are, but you never know when the difference between long and short is going to happen. So I might as well drill that out now while I'm thinking of it. This one is just going to be a straight disc collar with a a cross knurl on the outside. What I do want to do is put a straight knurl there and there, so that I've got something that will key into. I'll use some Loctite anyway, but I do like the idea of having that that knurl just to key the aluminium into the steel. I did run across the steel with a file, the corner of a file, and it doesn't seem to be hardened, so that's all good. In the tradition of my beautifully manicured drawings, this is the collar that's going to go up here. I can't, the nut sits about there. I can't have this going up too far because otherwise I can't get the collets in. So it's just going to be a short collar, 10 mil long there. Doesn't need to be much. I also want to try and keep the flats and the hex available, so that if I do jam it up, I can come in there with a pair of spanner and undo it as well. So first thing I need to do for this is get out my knurling tool and the straight knurl, install those wheels and put a knurl on these two surfaces. I have a piece of 5mm bar in there, and that's just because I'm unlikely to have an electrode that size, so if I ruin the collet I don't particularly care, but it's preferable to have something nice and tight that's locked up on, rather than having it either running up on the thread or loose, because that way with the knurl I may crush the underlying metal. So by having that piece of 5mm rod in there and everything's locked up tight, I've got a better chance of not ruining this. Not that they're horribly expensive, but I prefer them to buy once if I can get away with it. There's the straight knurl on the holder, and there's the straight knurl on the nut. The nice thing about doing that is that's 10.00, and that's now 10.2 or something like that. And so if I make a bush with a 10 size on there, that's going to be a press fit on there. I'll also put some Loctite on, and similarly with this one, but that'll mean that that bush that I put on there is going to be, should we say, keyed to the shaft, rather than just sitting there and relying on the Loctite, which is a much nicer idea. So there's the back bush, the one that goes on there. I've reamed that out just to give myself a decent fit, and as you can see, it's just starting to not go on there, so I can squirt a bit of Loctite around there, push that on, and I'll have that back what would you call it, handle, grip in place. Here it is, the finished object. That works quite nicely for being able to take a tungsten out of the collet. I've tried on the grinder, and it works. When it's out that much, of course, it's not going to work so well, but it certainly gives me that ability to just sort of roll it in my fingers and grind the tip. The flats are still there, so if something does get bound up. About the only problem I had was trying to get this nut seated square in this collar, so I might have to have another go at doing that. It's not quite straight, not that it matters in terms of its function, but it annoys me, so we'll have a look at that. Anyway, thanks for watching, and please spread the word. See you for the next one.